The morning was cold, and the streets were nearly empty, shrouded in a thin mist that clung to the damp pavement from the night before. The city moved at its usual slow pace, where nothing out of the ordinary ever seemed to happen. Henry and Madison, two seasoned police officers, were starting another routine shift at the local station, situated near the main square. It was the kind of place where minor disputes between neighbors and the occasional traffic accident made up most of the excitement. Life followed a predictable rhythm, and they were used to this monotony until that morning. Henry stood outside the station, sipping his coffee, watching the street with absent curiosity when something unusual caught his eye. A cat. Not just any cat, but the same gray-furred feline with deep, expressive eyes that frequently lingered around the station. He was a mystery, neither fully stray nor belonging to anyone, yet always present. But today, something was different. The cat wasn't just wandering. His movements were deliberate, focused. "Madison, look at the cat," Henry muttered, furrowing his brow. Madison barely glanced up from the papers she was organizing in the squad car. "Probably looking for food," she replied dismissively. But Henry wasn't convinced. He watched as the feline stopped, turned to face them, and let out a loud, piercing meow, a sound filled with urgency, an unmistakable plea for help. The sound echoed in the narrow alley beside the station, sending a chill up Henry's spine. Intrigued, he crouched, extending his hand toward the animal, expecting it to approach. But instead, the cat stepped back, its eyes locked onto Henry's, unblinking, intense. It meowed again, louder, more insistent. The air around them seemed to shift, the morning mist now feeling heavier, thicker. Henry straightened, turning to Madison. "This isn't normal. He's trying to tell us something." Madison hesitated, finally giving the feline her full attention. The cat's posture was rigid, its gaze unwavering. Then, as if satisfied that he had their attention, he turned and darted down the street, stopping every few steps to glance back at them, waiting. "He's leading us somewhere," Henry said. Without another thought, he began following. Madison groaned but felt an unshakable curiosity rising in her. "If this turns out to be nothing, you owe me a coffee," she muttered before jogging after them. The streets felt eerily quiet as they moved deeper into the city's forgotten corners. The cat led them through narrow alleys, past flickering street lamps, and into a desolate industrial area where abandoned warehouses stood like forgotten relics of a different era. The air grew heavier with each step, an unspoken tension settling over them. Then, the cat stopped. In front of them loomed an old warehouse, its rusted chains and broken windows telling stories of years of neglect. But something was wrong. Though the padlock was rusted, the chain had been disturbed recently. The cat let out a final, urgent meow and sat in front of the door, refusing to move. "Why here?" Madison whispered, her heartbeat quickening. Henry didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the chain, lifting it cautiously. It was loose, too loose. He exchanged a wary glance with Madison before pushing the heavy door open. The creaking sound sliced through the silence like a scream. A foul stench hit them instantly, thick and putrid. Madison recoiled, covering her nose as the cat slipped inside without hesitation. Flashlights in hand, Henry and Madison followed, their beams cutting through the darkness, revealing the decayed remnants of old crates, furniture covered in dust, and walls lined with cobwebs. Then, a sound, faint at first, a shifting noise from the far end of the warehouse. Both officers froze. Something or someone was here. Henry signaled Madison to move cautiously. As they inched forward, Madison's flashlight landed on a box, partially open. Something inside made her stomach drop. Children's clothes, small jackets, tiny shoes thrown haphazardly, as if someone had left in a hurry. "Henry," her voice trembled. He turned his light toward her, eyes widening as he processed what he saw. Then, from the corner of the warehouse, another discovery. A body. An adult male, lifeless, cold, with a chain wrapped around his fingers. A cross pendant dangled from his hand, catching the faint light of their flashlights. Before they could react, footsteps, heavy, fast, approaching from outside. They weren't alone. Henry grabbed Madison's arm, pulling her into the shadows. "We need to move now." But the cat remained by the body, as if standing guard. A figure appeared at the entrance, a tall man, dressed in dark clothing, something clutched in his hands. A weapon? Madison felt her breath hitch. The man scanned the warehouse, his posture tense. Just as he took a step forward, the silence was shattered by a loud, echoing meow. The cat. The sound cut through the darkness like an alarm. The man turned sharply, eyes locking onto the feline. Confusion flickered across his face. "Run!" Henry hissed, dragging Madison toward the back exit. They bolted into the night, footsteps pounding behind them. The air was thick with adrenaline as they darted through the abandoned lot, weaving through obstacles. Bullets rang out behind them, shattering the eerie quiet. They didn't stop. They could end single quotes by the time they reached safety. Breathless and shaken, Madison clutched the folder she had grabbed from the warehouse, documents detailing missing children, dates, and names. The truth was bigger, darker than they had imagined. "We need to expose this," she panted. Now, hours later, in a dimly lit office at the city's local newspaper, the editor scanned the files, his expression shifting from skepticism to grim realization. "If this is real, we're dealing with something far worse than a simple crime ring. It's real," Henry said, "and they'll do anything to keep it hidden." Inside, on the darkened sidewalk, the cat sat watching. His glowing eyes met Madison's, and for a moment, she swore he understood. A silent guardian, a protector of the truth. "Thank you," she whispered. Weeks later, after the criminals were arrested and justice was set in motion, Madison and Henry visited a shelter. Among the many cats, one caught Madison's eye, gray fur, intense eyes, a presence that felt strangely familiar. She smiled. "I think we found our friend. As the city moved on, the memory of that night lingered. The cat had led them to the truth when no one else could. A silent hero in the shadows, watching, waiting, ensuring justice was served.